for Leaders, this live conversation series that we have with various leaders across the globe to ultimately help leaders themselves shape their personal narrative and have clarity on the strategy and tactics that they can use to do that more sharply. Today, we have someone I'd like to think of as a good friend, Lauren, who's tuning in from New York. Hey, Lauren, welcome to the show.
Hi, Karan. Good morning. Good afternoon to you. Really thrilled to be here. Thanks for inviting me to have this conversation.
Amazing to have you. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So, a quick introduction about Lauren Lotka. She's the founder of Lotka & Co. She's been named in the top 15 global recruiters by Business Insider in 2023, 22, 21, and 20. Lauren has received notable press in Business of Fashion, Business Insider, Ad Age, and Morning Brew, and has spoken publicly on the importance of organizational culture, leadership development, and talent ecosystems in our world today. Her approach has proven successful with clients as North Face, Adidas, Foxtrot, the Reformation Boards, Ace Hotel, and Google. The quick introduction. There's a lot of interesting stuff to unpack, and Lauren and I were catching up just before we hit live, and there are a couple of things that Lauren is very excited about, and some other things that she feels very strongly that we should speak about today. So, without much further ado, I'm going to jump into the first question that we have for Lauren, given we're here to talk about branding for executive search. Now, Lauren, Lotka & Co. has developed a proprietary data-driven cultural ecosystem approach with your five-step formula: discover, learn, build, curate, and evolve. That has been instrumental in guiding organizations globally. Can you elaborate on how this framework can be adapted by individual leaders to help them own and shape their?
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you again for this opportunity to share with you on the work that we do. And certainly like our collaborations over time have been really inspiring and I think incredibly relevant, especially given where we are as a world and where people are today. There is no doubt that we are living in an era of intense cultural dynamics. That's always really been the case, but I think given the way we communicate, the way we engage, where technology sits in our world and in our hands every single day, it's accelerating faster and faster. And for us, we see all of these elements, that drive culture inside organizations and outside the broader world. And we wanted to be really honest with our clients and the people that we worked with about how to be very true to the opportunities and obstacles that we see in the workplace and how we can use our practice as executive search and talent partners to help address those challenges, right? So this came after many years of work in this space for me, seeing the opportunities that we would encounter with our clients, and more importantly, the obstacles, right? We would get into assignments to place executives in organizations and start to really dig under the surface to find out what was going on. And I always felt that this was a really important space for us to be impactful and influencing in the right kinds of ways, right? So with a couple of really amazing partners, I brought into a thinking session around how can we help our clients to deliver more value in this work. And so we designed this cultural ecosystem framework. It's really a design thinking framework. It allows us to access the right kinds of insights and to really help build brands for the future and to make a mark, right? The whole idea is that we want to harness and identify these cultural drivers and look beyond business as, just a business. And it's how do we approach culture as this like living ecosystem of life paths, experiences, perspectives, and capabilities. That's always been a really hard thing for people to do because it's always moving. There's always things that are influencing and changing the way that we interact and the way we do things. But this framework has been a massive game changer for us. So, we start with kind of a 5-phase approach. We discover, we learn, we build, we curate, we evolve. You are probably quite familiar, as a designer yourself and thinking through these steps. And this is not too dissimilar from what a lot of people might have encountered, in strategy or design line or, different areas of the business, but we really bring it into the people and culture part of our business. And it's illuminating, and it really brings people together around these shared needs. It's the goal for us has always been how to be very honest about what's happening. And I think that is oftentimes quite hard, given the noise and kind of the churn of how things move. So in our discover process, it's really about getting to understand what's really going on, right, in an organization so that we can make the right decisions based on the information that we have. Oftentimes, people don't actually have access to that right information. So it's really getting to ground on what is going on to ensure that we can build the right strategy from, that point forward. And that's where, our learn, build, curate, and evolve phases come in to help ensure that we're guiding our clients along that journey and taking the right steps together. It's been massively, I would say, inspiring for even me to see with all of our clients how this helps them to think in a more amplified way about the way that they can impact change within their organizations. Between us and everybody here, people are usually coming to us looking for a new executive, right? It's like, hey, we have this problem. We're looking to do X, Y, and Z. Here's the brief. Here's what we're thinking. And our goal is to really understand that, but go into the organization, right? We can't possibly fix or address that particular need without really understanding what's going on. So the cultural ecosystem has been a huge point of inspiration, focus, connection for us to get to ground right out of the gate. I think the way that you're thinking about this is it comes full circle here to executive search at an individual level is really interesting, right? Because we bring this philosophy closer to the individual work as well. And I think people need more of these tools than ever, right? Like, how do I show up? How do I continue to build my own personal brand and narrative? And I'm excited to talk a little bit more about that with you today, because we want to help everybody feel like their best selves. And I think in my work, that's something that I get to do day to day. And I'd love to kind of dig in a little bit more with you on that.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, typically when you're going through these 5 steps, right, with various clients, and you're doing these across organizations of different sizes, leaders, when they come to you at the outset, they have they have a certain perspective, and then you're dealing also with this in a variety of different sort of geographical and cultural sort of contexts. Do you find that there are a couple of things that you then have to engage with the leader themselves in first clarifying what is it that they see, and then what is the actual reality? You go back, you do the research, and you come back to it, and maybe sometimes there's dissonance in the way the leader themselves are seeing it, and that comes down to their own filters. So can you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we get into kind of the granular aspect of the process is really this framework that we help, and it's easy to kind of relate to. You understand the steps that we're going to take. Where it becomes quite powerful is that we have a proprietary tool and assessment that we built out that helps collect those insights, right? The goal was that we are used to having these conversations one-to-one with executives. And it's not that I don't think what the CEO has to say is important. It absolutely is. It's the key to understanding what the priorities are. But what we really want to focus on is understanding what's happening below the surface, right? So our goal was to say, how do we take what would usually take months and months to run a discovery process with an entire team, bring that to a shorter time frame? Because to be honest, so much can change in 3 months, so much can change in 3 weeks. So we use this tool to survey teams and leadership teams, depending on like how confidential something might be. We choose like a smaller subset of the team, and we deploy this survey out to the group. And it's really more of like an engaging kind of question answer. It's a journey. There's a lot of really thoughtful kind of experience designed into it. So it's not your typical like, how are you feeling at work survey. We were really intentional about how we were building that, because we also want to get as accurate answers as we can. So we run that anonymously. It collects data on how the team really sees the organization. It's qualitative and quantitative, because while we run that survey, we're also running one-to-one stakeholder interviews. So we're getting this like pretty broad picture. My team and I are getting FaceTime with the leadership team. We're getting insights across the organization, diverse positions, experience, like how people in marketing are seeing it, how ops are seeing it. Really like helps thread the needle across the business in some beautiful ways. And that insight comes back into a broader analysis and a picture that we can then share back to the leadership team to say, here's what we saw, here's what's working, here's what's not working. And actually what you thought was the big core issue, actually, that's not what your people say, right? So here's where it may be true, but here's where the underlying issues are driving the breakdown in communication, are driving the breakdown in your teams not showing up effectively in these areas. So we're able to get really, really close to the current like vibe of what's going on in the organization, and then help our client understand this is how it's going to impact how we lead this executive search, how we lead this recurate kind of moment for you, because oftentimes we uncover that perhaps it's not a new executive that's going to fix this. Oftentimes it's not, right? Like a new executive is going to come in and help to empower, the team to win in different ways, or to address a big structural need. But there's a lot of work that existing teams need to do. And I always compare it to like high performing sports teams, right? Like it's a team. Even the people off the field, right, make these things happen. So we can't think about teams in this kind of very singular sense. It's a constellation of people. It's really an ecosystem of skills and attributes and strengths, and strategies, and all of these things that work well together, right? And we read and we hear all about this. Like I was at a conference yesterday with a lot of ex-Amazonians, right? There's a lot of discussion of like what has made that company very successful. You don't have to go very far to get these types of insights and information. And really understanding organizational culture is the important and really important thing to focus on, right? It's like, what are the values? What are the priorities? How do we show up? What are the things that are actually not on the website? What are the like unsaid norms and things that are happening behind the scenes? That's hard to kind of get into without the right capture for that, right? So our goal was to design a tool that allowed us to capture as much of that insight in a very anonymous and efficient way to ensure that we could help our clients make the right decisions. And it's been really powerful at helping those leaders to get honest about what it is, right? I can't tell you how often we've had to go back and say, trust is like very clearly important to all of you, but you lack it, right? And so how is a person going to help all of you rebuild a trust issue that you have within your leadership team, right? So our goal is to be in a position where we don't just put that on the table and ask the team to go figure it out. We say, here's a great moment for you as a team. Here's a coaching partner that we work with. Here's an individual like Karn who can help individuals work on these elements together. It's a really beautiful opportunity to ensure that we're feeding back what really needs to be shared with our clients, and to be a useful collaborative partner in that way, right? Like our consulting practice is really anchored around our own values. And I think that that's a piece of what we should talk about today as well, is like on an individual level, what can you do in face of, where you want to go as an individual or a leader, wherever you are on your career path. Like, who are you? What do you value? Using this kind of process is a nice kind of framework to help individual leaders think about their role, the impact they want to have, the type of work they want to do, what they need to feel inspired and engaged. These are all things that are available to us. Sometimes it doesn't feel like that because we might not have, a huge kind of community of people that maybe can inspire us in this way. But I think we can get into some of those ideas and thoughts today, because everyone needs to help, and none of us really do it alone. So.
No, for sure. And, and I think you already segued into my next sort of question, which is just building on the fact that you've done all this work. Like typically you're working with these leaders, you've got this brief, you've gone and done this deep research, you've got this insight about the organization, and then you come back and you sort of bounce it back to the leaders and saying that maybe there's this gap. And as I understand, with the framework that you use, maybe in the fourth step or so, you sort of then go out into the market and now actually doing this executive search in helping find the right set of leaders, right? So looked at it from the other lens, which is of the executives on that side.
Mhm.
Having heard you talk about some of this stuff, what do you feel they can then focus on specifically? And this is also touching on the last point that you made about how leaders can show up. What do you think they should sort of do? What should they focus on? What should they do well today in terms of their profile and putting out their narrative in a way that they can
Mhm.
show up, to be the right options at the kind of organization that you're also working with?
Absolutely. So you touched on an important part. That work that we do is almost always segued into an executive search or a team build need. And the insights that we take on the organization are also giving us deep insights onto the types of leadership styles that exist within that organization. So we are very much inspired by what we call our own cultural archetypes, the strengths and the attributes of how people show up. And the primary difference to our system versus some other kind of assessments is that we're thinking about these styles and how they drive this kind of more elliptical framework, right? Like as an ecosystem kind of generates and regenerates, we see leadership styles fit within different points of that journey. And so you have people who are amplifiers, you have people who are community builders, you have different strengths that you really want to dial up and you want to reinforce. And in some cases, you have organizations that have a tendency to over-index in certain areas. So we're mapping all of those data points to ensure our client isn't falling into a trap of like, this is what we've always prioritized, and we're really balancing these things, right? And we're looking for, in our case, as a talent partner at Latkin Co, we're looking for the cultural currency, right? It's the values, it's the leadership philosophy, it is the unique strengths that serve as anchors with leaders. We have no shortage of ways to assess somebody's skills and experiences. You can go on LinkedIn and look at those things. You can look at a resume, but really getting to understand people in that way is what's most important for us as executive search partners, right? Like our goal is to find somebody that's going to bring the balance into a leadership team, and perhaps the emotional intelligence is important, perhaps empathy is an important skill, right? These are a little bit harder to ascertain from a resume, right? But not always. I think that there's an opportunity for individuals, if you're an executive or you're a leader and you're looking to ensure that your brand, your who you are, is really represented authentically. It's going through these steps, right? So really like going through your own discovery process. And you can do that with somebody like yourself, right? Who's like really focused and has a whole offering on helping people to understand like what are our core values, what are my experiences to date, and how am I helping people to kind of grow on their own path. What are the things that you really can bring to your work and to your community, and really getting honest about those things, right? And I think we don't often have the time
Yeah.
to step outside of work or personal life to do these things, but we talked about this before. It's really important to remember. It's so cheesy and cliche, but it's like the oxygen mask. Everybody's been, most people have been on an airplane. You've heard like, before you can help anybody around you, you have to put the
Help
oxygen
yourself.
mask on. And I think most people in the world today can relate to that, right? We've all been through a global pandemic, and it's not easy. So like first and foremost, like what are you doing for yourself? If you can't do something today, what is it this week? Like break it down into manageable pieces, right? To really kind of take some time for yourself to think about these things, right? So, again, I'm a big, I love coaching, therapy, like whatever it is that feels like really useful to you, like lean into those things, right? To help you go through this initial discovery process. I mean, also ChatGPT, Claude, these amazing AI tools are really available to anybody who wants to just like start asking questions. Like, I don't even know where to begin, right? So I
Yeah.
think that that's an important piece is identifying the value proposition and then kind of going from there, like see where that journey takes you in terms of, okay, well, what does that mean for me in my next career move or where I want to be? What are the types of organizations that share these values, that are solving the things that I care about? Or it's like the way they operate is something that feels really important to me at this point in my life, right? Maybe I want more balance. Maybe I want to work from home. Maybe I miss working with people because I feel inspired when I sit across from somebody in an office. Like these are the important elements that are, there's the values and the kind of like how you do things, right? And
Yeah.
I think that we have a really, it's a very diverse kind of work landscape these days. There's a lot of different options. So thinking about all of those pieces and how they fit together is a really important step, because I find that a lot of people get paralyzed by the prospect of like beginning a job search, for example, right? And there's a lot, you could spend all day on LinkedIn applying for jobs. I highly advise not to do that. Like, I don't think that that's a super helpful use of time. I would much rather encourage people to lean into their network, to network if you don't have one, to feel like you can start to learn about where you want to be and go to those places, right? If you don't have access to these conferences or these rooms, do the research and find out where they are. There's a really interesting thing I read from a coach who said, sometimes people don't have those mentors in their immediate, world, right? So find the people who inspire you, dead or alive, people who've written books that you love, and ask ChatGPT to help them coach you. What an amazing job. You could actually find the inspiration from somebody that you've read their books and you would love to have met them. And the reality is you'll never have the chance to meet them. Ask ChatGPT to help you think about like their guidance and their expertise in your life today. It's kind of amazing that these are things that are available to us. We don't always think about that because a lot of people are more worried about AI taking their job today, but really,
Yeah.
like, how can I use these tools to amplify whatever it is that I need to do today? So I think it's, the discover piece, the learn piece, that then allows you to go into kind of where the build component, I think, becomes really powerful for any individual. It's really the opportunity to hone your narrative and to do some writing if that worked for you, to have more of these conversations. It's oftentimes in discourse, it's getting it out of your head, whether it's onto paper, into a conversation, into collaboration. And that's where I think it becomes a really powerful and generative way to kind of take that forward in a meaningful way, so that you're not just stuck on a computer. Maybe that's a big part of it, but you're using this in a different way in your work and in your life.
Yeah, I think so many great insights over there. And, and one thing that I'm finding when working with leaders also, because typically when I work with them and they want to figure out what is their next move, or where is it that they want to spend time in the next, say, 5 years, and they realize that shaping their personal narrative is a key part of the right kind of organization, finding them through, key partners in that process, like Lotka and Co. So, and ultimately, what I tell them also is that if you're working together, where is it that you want to end up in 12 months? If you're going to invest in building your personal narrative and have clarity on that, where is it that you want to get to? You want to get to this next job role? Do you want to make yourself more attractive for this next other company? And quite often, when you look at content as a means to sort of talk, as a means to share whatever it is in your mind and what's important to you, you can do that by working backwards. Even if, let's say, I am a VP of something, or I'm an AVP and I'm targeting the VP role, and the same organization or a different organization might have put out a job profile over there, and quite often what they're describing in that job description can become opportunities for you to talk about, right? If there's resonance over there and if you're looking to sort of change the organization. But I think, like you said, this whole thing of speaking more authentically, speaking more coherently, and just sort of putting yourself out there a little bit more is what the world needs. No, I wouldn't say just a little, maybe a lot more of that today, and as we come up to the last say 5-6 minutes or so, I know that before we started talking, that's something that was really calling to you to sort of talk about, that what kind of leadership do we need in this time here and now. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. We need people to show up more than ever in this moment. And I know that feels incredibly challenging, especially given the political landscape, the geopolitical situation everywhere. I mean, it's very difficult and it's very hard. And I don't think it's an easy thing for many people. But from my perspective, we really need to come together. We need to find focus in this time, right? And really remember that this pace of change is certainly not going to slow down. So being very honest about like who our people are, who our values are, like the impact that we want to have day to day, getting to ground on that like almost on a daily basis, I think is really important, right? And really practicing like very simply gratitude, right? Despite it feeling really difficult and really challenging, there are things that we can be grateful for. So trying to keep optimism high and gratitude high, because I think that without the absence of that, none of this is possible. And if you can't do it for yourself, lean into other people to help you do that, right? And that's really like the community and the connection piece is the second piece, which is like non-negotiable for me. These challenges that we are facing in the world and in business, we have to focus on fostering genuine collaboration. And this is also where creativity happens, inspiration happens. We have over-indexed on optimizing and like making everything hyper efficient. Many spaces have meant that we have removed this. But I've spoken to a lot of leaders where, this like return to office has been a huge issue for a lot of people. And I think we could really benefit from more connection and collaboration. That's not me saying that I think we should all return to the office 5 days a week. It is me saying that we need to find the moments and the spaces where this is available to us. And if it's being mandated by your office and your workplace, do what you can to remember that there's moments for opportunity in that, right? This kind of connection, this moment to relate to each other and support one another is super, super important. And if you're a leader, you're in your career 10, 15, 20 years, don't forget about where you were at the very beginning and what it must be like for somebody who's coming in at the ground floor, who's grown up in a pandemic, grown up through all of this unbelievable volatility. It wasn't easy for us, but it is certainly not easy for them. I think there's a huge divide in terms of what people think about that. There's a lot of like, people are entitled, this, that, and the other thing. And again, that comes back to understanding the cultural currency of what's going on in your organization. You have to be attuned to what's going on in the world and in these organizations. And really understanding people, I think, is a key component of that. It's very hard to feel divided. It's very hard to be divided in these moments, and that's how we feel. But like, really, can we put that on the shelf to relate to one another? I'm not assuming that that's easy for many people, but it's really important. And then for me, it's, culture remains our greatest multiplier. Like that is always the big opportunity is really thinking about where we can, use that as our amplifier, where we can lean into that. And again, that you might not feel comfortable doing it on a LinkedIn Live in the morning, but reach out to a friend, reach out to somebody at work, get a coffee, grab a meal, do something together. It's not some big crazy thing. These are like tangible things that we can do every single day. So those are the things that I would say are most important. Focus, connection, culture. That's what I try to practice every single day.
That's amazing. That's amazing, Lauren. I mean, we have just a couple of minutes to go. We do have one question from Darren. It says, great conversation, Lauren. I love your approach. Do you still consider the MBTI personality types relevant?
I mean, we use our own kind of framework to archetype leadership styles. So everybody, and this is kind of part of the challenge, right? Most organizations use different tools, different assessments, different types of, whether it's the Briggs-Myers or the DISC assessment, the predictive index, like there really are countless different tools. I think it's really about like understanding what you relate to. Like if you're focusing on this on an individual basis, this isn't something that you're doing within an organization, really getting into ground on like what you feel represents you. And sometimes those assessments also shine a light on things that we don't always love to see. Like we'd much rather be an influencer, but the reality is like our strengths are in building and connecting people out behind the scenes. And I think it's more about if you're looking to develop up or dial up something that maybe isn't in your strong suit, isn't in your personality type, focus on that, right? Like what can I learn to go learn from somebody else, those types of things. Those are opportunities that you always have, is to kind of think about where I want to grow, where I want to shine over here and kind of, elevate myself. So certainly relevant, but I guess it depends on the context.
Amazing. Thanks. I think we just have a minute to go. I think we're on time, but thank you so much for this, Lauren. We actually had a couple of more questions, but I think it was still a great conversation. If people have to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You can reach out to us on LinkedIn. We're very active on LinkedIn. It's a good place to kind of just send us a message, and we'll share our calendar and find time to set up a call or a Zoom. But we would love to meet anybody that's interested in learning more about our work. And certainly, I think you have tons to offer people in these areas too. So always happy to collaborate with you as well.
Fantastic. Thanks everyone for joining. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. We do this, I'm sure you enjoyed this conversation. We do this every Thursday, which is LinkedIn for Leaders Live. I do this every Thursday. So look forward to joining us next week. Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks, Karn. Have a great day.